up, homie?
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good today, actually. Thank you.
That's great to know. I just drove through some crazy downpourage on the highway.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, ponding, the ponding water. Scary.
Good old ponding water.
Ponding water, and the semi-drivers really enjoy that.
Yeah, well, hey, the drivers here in Nashville are just already they're so way above horrible that I'm sure they're already anxious when they drive through here anyway.
Way above horrible or below?
Well, they're more than horrible, I would say. Or average. They're average horrible.
Yeah.
So,
average
anyway.
horrible. Yeah, anyway.
How's your weekend been?
My weekend's good. Yesterday I actually cleaned out the above ground pool. I'm thinking about getting it going. There's a lot of maintenance that needs to be done with some hoses and tubes and the pump, and so it's not a guarantee, but I'm hoping.
Well, you know what? We may just have to skip on one of our afternoon sessions at camp and just do a above ground pool cleaning.
Well, I'm hoping to have it ready by then, so we could,
okay.
In case we do a lab session or something, that we can come by.
We're definitely doing a lab session. We may. I'll come over maybe either later this coming week, or definitely I'm open that whole week before camp with a couple days. So we'll make sure it's up and running, glistening, and make sure the inner tubes and the floats are all up to the appropriate PSI for maximum floatage.
Yeah. But there's nothing like a cool dip in the Torrey Hills pool after a lab session.
Sure. Yeah, there really isn't. Having been there myself, I can attest it's pretty sweet.
Yeah. And speaking of lab sessions, and I know we have a really interesting podcast about bike power and things like that. So, but I've been trying to get my mojo back, and I was telling you that the only thing that sounded appealing, and I know I take a lot of shit for this, but growing up somewhat of a hockey player, we used to do a lot of off-season work with inline skates, otherwise AKA rollerblades. Rollerblading. So I kind of just had this urge to start rollerblading to just see how it was, and it's really panned out for me pretty well. I mean, it got me going every morning this week for about an hour, 8 to 10 miles. So I think it's kind of getting me back in the groove. But one thing occurred to me out there, the lab, the old airport where I ride a lot and I have been rollerblading. It's a basically a mile and a quarter loop. Okay. So I got to thinking about this because I'm just taking it easy, but the one thing I've been doing is trying to just negative split laps all the way down, just to and I start super slow and kind of just build naturally and not really pay much attention to it. But on one of my kind of harder laps later in the week, I got around a mile and a quarter in 6 minutes. Okay, which is not fast at all. But it occurred, I felt like I was going pretty fast though, thinking about, so I always thinking about runners, how does that compare to fast runners? So the mile, a 4-minute mile would essentially be 5 minutes around that track, right? So,
yeah.
And I can do that, but it is balls to the walls, and I am flying in my mind on rollerblades, and I'm thinking to myself, this is the mile pace for runners.
Right. Yep.
I mean, that just blows my head off thinking about that. So I got to thinking about that a little bit, and so I looked up some world record times in the 5K. Do you know? I mean, I would have had no idea, and these may not be the latest, but the ones I found in the 5K. And so maybe this would be a little inspiration to people, at the end of their sprint or their Olympic, to kind of keep these numbers in mind, that the 5K world record is 12 minutes and 37 seconds.
Jesus Christ.
By a guy named Kenenisa Bekele from Ethiopia.
Good old Kenenisa.
Kenenisa Bekele. Floating. And guess who has the 10K world record? You guessed it.
His brother, Benenisa.
No, Kenenisa. It has both. And he wrote...
Wow.
So at the end of your Olympic, start thinking about maybe nailing down a 26-minute and 17-second 10K.
Wow.
I mean,
blows my mind.
Dude, I could barely get a 5K out in that time. Well,
for sure.
That's pretty good stuff. Half marathon world record. Do you know that one?
Mm-hmm. I do not know that one.
58 minutes 23 seconds.
Of course.
By Zersane Tadesa.
It was on the tip of my tongue and I just couldn't get it off.
Yeah, you know where he's from?
Alabama.
He's from Wisconsin. No.
Oh, yeah, right.
He's from a place called Eritrea. No, I don't even know where that is. Do you? I mean, maybe some of you people listening will know. Maybe
isn't
even
know. Isn't that a part of the male anatomy?
I don't know. Could be. Could be.
Interesting.
And well, one final. The marathon record was set by Dennis Kimetto. You know him, right?
I do know that name.
Yeah. And it was in the Berlin Marathon, and 2 hours, 2 minutes, 57 seconds.
Oh, man.
And the cool part about that was his mile, you know what that translates into as a mile pace?
Faster than I can drive usually.
It's 4:42 miles.
Holy moly.
I mean, come on, dude. So
exactly. Come on, people.
Basically, at that pace on my rollerblades, my all-out pace, that dude is hanging with me at the very least for 26 miles.
He's carrying your water and handing it to you for when you get winded.
That just does not even compute to me. I don't know. I've seen them. Yeah, when Country Music Marathon used to have like the Kenyans and the world best come, and you watch them fly by. I mean, they're doing 5-minute miles. It's just like, what?
Like it's exactly like it's nothing.
You might be able to, but I don't think I could. I honestly don't think I could run a 5-minute mile.
I can get I can definitely run, and I've averaged sub 6 for a 5K. This was last year.
Okay.
I have no idea what it would be now, but who knows? Could I be close, or will I have my fitness have dropped off that much? Which is kind of the topic of today.
Yes, it is. Do you want to lay the groundwork here?
Yeah, I'll lay the groundwork. So I floated this to kind of get some discussion going in our Crushing Iron closed Facebook group. So if you're listening and you want to be a part of the discussion, listen to that. But so I've been on a huge layoff for cycling since actually this last December. So if you're listening and you don't know what the date is, sometimes I forget that people don't listen to these in order and like live in real time. So
right, yeah.
So this is what, July 1st. And the last time I rode a bike was in December. And so I was curious. I got a new bike, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get on. I'm going to go and do a quick little test, because I've got a power meter, just kind of see where I'm at. And I was like, I wonder how much I've lost since my last test in late November. And before I get into this, I think functional threshold power, and that's what it means when you hear me say FTP. While I think it has value, there are so many factors that need to be taken in before to what a person's functional threshold power is before you can actually deem it really, really strong or meh. I've seen better. And they're just, and we'll talk about that, as we get going on the podcast, but there are so many variables and so many things to consider. So when you hear somebody say, oh, my FTP is this, my FTP is that, don't think, oh, well, you must be like some super power cyclist and I'm just weak and feeble. There are a lot of things taken to consider. So rewinding backwards, you and I did Ironman Wisconsin last year, September 11th, 2016. And I hadn't done actually a functional threshold test before that for probably 2 or 3 months, just because once you get into Ironman training, I find them I don't want to say useless, but they become less useful the last like 8 to 12 weeks, because a lot of it you're just nailing down pacing. And so before that, it was in the 2:52.60 range. But for the ride that I did at Ironman Wisconsin, I ended up averaging. Let me pull it up real quick. I ended up averaging 183 with a fairly low heart rate. My average heart rate was 139 that day. My goal is to keep it around 135, but all in all, it was a good, solid ride, and I was able to run fairly well after it. Everything was pretty much on point. So again, average 183. I took my usual post Ironman break, and didn't do much really of anything between that and mid to late November. So took a pretty good time off. Probably put on a few pounds.
I'm proud of you, man.
Thank you. I mean, a lot of it was non-negotiable, since we had just had a baby at Wisconsin, and my wife was like superstar mom of the universe, with our 7-week-old at Ironman Wisconsin basically taking very nice. So anyway, it was a you want to say a welcome break / forced break, which if you're married, you understand what that's called. But I did a test in late November. We'll call it November 28th. And my power for that day was 210. So it had dropped about 30% from where I believe it was. So while it was a pretty decent drop, it wasn't, it wasn't just something horrible. And this is something that actually, if you do a lot of research on training and periodization, they often tell you that in order to really, really get better, you have to take these periods of time away, not just away from training, but not hard training, because your body can only absorb so much before it kind of tends to flatline. And that's when you start to overtrain and see, minimal return on investment from the effort you're putting in. So,
okay,
November 28th, 2016, my functional threshold power was 210. Fast forward to yesterday, July 1st. Almost a good whole full 6 months of literally no cycling and no pedaling. And I did my functional threshold test yesterday, and I know I already gave you the results, but it went from a 210 to 208.
Yeah.
Only a 2-watt difference in power drop.
Wow. So variables, all that stuff, it's still within like 10, or whatever, right?
It was within 2.
I know, but I'm just saying it.
Yeah, exactly. All variables considered, whether it was better sleep or worse sleep, whether it was, because I am on a slightly different position on my bike. Now with this new bike, I'm a little bit less aggressive. Definitely probably a couple pounds heavier, but all in all, negligible.
Right.
I mean, I think if I did it again tomorrow, I could probably get high enough to where I was 210. And so that got me thinking, I mean, obviously in a million different directions. And what I think I've come to the conclusion to is that while I do believe that time off is necessary for your body and you will lose some, I think what I believe, and this has happened to me before, is I believe that there is also a not a ceiling, but there is a basement to how much you will lose in a specific sport, as long as you just literally stay fit. And while my power may have barely dropped from 210 to 208, now you got to take into fact, okay, well, how long could he actually ride for in his endurance zone, compared to what I used to, and so it's all give and take, and it's all what have you lost and what, but I was actually pretty stunned. I expected to be in the low 200s was at like my okay, this is awesome. And then under 200 would have been slightly depressing, but given I had taken 6 months off of cycling, which is the longest I had taken off since I started doing triathlon, it kind of is what it is. And so I opened up this discussion in the closed Facebook group, and there's one thing that I had kind of come to agree with before somebody else floated it out there, was running hills and weight training is the reason it stayed where it was.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Especially
if you, I mean, when you're saying that, like the first thing that came to my mind was like, okay, you've been cycling for many, many years, and I just think that sort of thing can't be underestimated either. Because I've seen it where people who it's like you with swimming. I'm sure that'll come back fairly quickly.
We're gonna find out this week.
Yeah, we are. So those kind of things too, I think are huge, right? I think if like with me, I would anticipate that I might have similar numbers in a way, not exactly similar, but similar variances, because although I never really have done those types of tests, but I know that because I have such a huge cycling background, like mountain biking and things like that, I usually pick up the bike fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And but it's certainly not the same with me in the pool. If I take off a long time in the pool, I am dead in the water. Yeah. And sort of like that a little bit with running, because it's not my DNA or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you've built up a long time, but it's interesting. No, I've seen so many people I know that were runners when they were kind of in a high school, college deal, and they haven't really gotten into anything. Like, yeah, I think I might do that half marathon tomorrow, and they haven't been running, and they go out and not crush it, but crush me. It's like, what?
Yeah. No, but the biggest difference would be that my average heart rate for these sessions back in November were 178, which is still pretty high. I can get pretty high. And yesterday it was 189.
Okay.
So a massive jump in heart rate.
Yeah.
And that's where you see, and that's what I was going kind of back to at the beginning was that's where you can see, although you may have maintained some of your ability to sustain short durations of power, your aerobic system, which is vitally and the most important system when it comes to efficiency, when it comes to long distance training and racing, that has obviously been detrained and deconditioned.
Yeah.
That's a huge heart rate difference. And so again, we go back to, and I go back to this all the time. It's when we talk about it with, and this is like become like one of their favorite quotes from the podcast is like, race with the horse you trained on. And that's the thing, is that you see these numbers that people throw out all the time, whether it's on social media or, wherever, where they just in chit chat amongst friends, and you hear a number and you're like, oh God, I've got to get to that. I'm like, what exactly, what horse are you trying to build? Are you trying to build one that can go for, 2 or 3 laps? Are you trying to build one that can go, cross country? And so power may be different, but it's who can hold these sustained numbers at a lower threshold for these long periods of time. And that's where all the variances come in, and what specific system you're trying to train, for the season or for your training cycle, for your athlete training cycle. And so there's just so many things that take into effect. And then there's also, weight. A person who weighs more is always going to have an advantage when it comes to power. Now, obviously they have to be fit, but that's where you get into, there's a calculation that people do, and this is kind of I don't want to say it's a gold standard, but it's probably one of the better indicators on how fast and powerful you really are. And it's watts per kilogram. And basically it comes down to your functional threshold power and how many kilograms you are. And so basically you're saying, all right, well, and that's the biggest thing in the Tour de France. You want to have a really, really, really high ratio of watts to kilogram, because you want to be able to put out a lot of power and just carrying a little bit of weight. And so there's so many differences in training and stuff like that, where, you're all building a different style of horse. So don't get caught up in another person's horsepower when they may just be trying to go for a sprint or an Olympic, and they can hold 300 watts. But if you ask them to hold 250 for 3 hours, they'd crumble, versus the alternative, which is somebody who is trying to train for a longer distance that can sustain these efforts, and not just sustain these efforts, which is one of the big things that I talk about a lot, or I dish out a lot in training. It's inserting these really hard efforts and threshold efforts in your long rides and being able to sustain them, withstand them, and then continue to hold your endurance pace for the remainder. Because that essentially is what being able to race hard and well is all about. It is being able to push it when you need to or when you have to. Like when you and I went up, whatever that Barlow, whatever that road was at Wisconsin last year, you didn't have a choice unless you were in like some like ridiculous chain ring and cassette. You were going to have to go more than likely way out of your power zone to be able to get up it without falling over, or you're gonna walk it, and so that's just another part of that resiliency you need to build up over a long course. But again, I thought it was a very interesting result, and I will be somewhat documenting this return to cycling and what the numbers release. But yeah, I was happy with it. But again, there's so much, weight training, yes, new bike position, yes, I think helped a lot.
New bike psychology.
You beat me to it. Sometimes I like it, but sometimes it annoys the hell out of me when you start thinking the same way I do.
Come
100.
on, man. You've been reading my blog for 5 years.
That's right.
You're just taking my ideas.
Right, I know, and I'm just repurposing them.
In a more professional context.
Exactly,
Mine are all just
yeah.
like wafting around like, I wonder if this is something. And you're just like turning them into...
I've got a theory.
Yeah, I got a theory.
I'm taking your hypothesis and turning them into a paper.
You're reading it, scratching your chin, going, he might be onto something there. I'm going to have to back this up with numbers.
Yeah. But no, you're actually 100% right. My perspective going into my quote-unquote test was that I had absolutely zero expectation. It was by far, honestly, by far the best paced test I've ever done. And you see this all the time with people who go out and do whether it's a heart rate test or whether it's not even a test, whether it's a race, and you go out balls to the wall in the first 5 minutes and then you crumble like a stale cookie, and that's what happens. And so, but this one, because I had really no expectation and literally no idea where I was, I had to go off feel. And because I went off feel with no expectation, and it was just not just a feel thing, but it was a no expectation of really this was a no fail ride. There was literally no fail.
Yeah.
Like it was like, all right, well, I can think I may be able to do this, but where the hell am I getting this number? I haven't ridden my bike in half a year. It's like, so I'd be just making something up. So let's not make something up. Let's just see let's do. I did 2 8-minute tests. And so the first one, it was like, all right, don't blow your load on the first. But it was also for these first 3 or 4 minutes, let's just see what it feels like. And then let's look at the number. And then I can kind of get a gauge of when to push and the time. But you're 100% right. You're 100% right. Is not just the psychology behind and the mindset that I had going into the test, but it was also the approach of, this is a win. I have no expectation, so I don't feel like I can fail, because that's what happens a lot when people go out and do these races and do these tests or whatever it is, swim, bike, run. It's like they throw out this thing, and then if they don't do it, then they consider themselves a failure, or that they're just not good enough, or then they make excuses. I'm like, well, where the hell did you get that number from? It's like this guy, I'm not sure if he even listened to the podcast, but he hasn't responded to me since I gave him this guy that purchased one of my online training plans through Training Peaks. He said, hey, so my goal pace for this event is 7:35s. Where should I be training for, in my easy zone? I'm like, dude, first of all, I have no idea. I've never met you or talked to you. I'd love to give you some good feedback, but I would be totally misplaced in even like giving you an estimate on what I think your easy zone should be, because I have no idea what it is now. And where the hell did you get this 7:35? Like, is it one of those, well, it would be nice to do this pace? Well, nice to do this pace doesn't mean jack crap. It's about what you can do. And so, but that's where you get caught up so many times with these tests is you don't go by effort, you go by what the number says, and you try to back it up with this hope and dream of, and sometimes and more often than not, it's totally irrational that you're set up to do nothing but fail. Except, and on the other hand, you should go into it thinking, all right, this is how I feel today. I'm going to give it my best. More importantly, I'm going to try to pace it the best I can, and then the numbers will be what they will be. And then you can take it from there and think, okay, I'm going to apply this to my training because I feel like it was an accurate representation of where I am currently with my fitness. Or I can say to myself, you know what? That was kind of a bad ride. I was up late all night. I had a ton of coffee. I ate like crap the night before. Which is a comment and note that I get all the time looking through my athletes' training logs. It's like if they have a rough run or a rough ride or swim, it's always followed by ... Well, I don't really know what I expect. I ate like crap last night. I had 2 or 3 desserts, and this is what I get. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you get. Nothing wrong with it. You don't get going out and having a good time every once in a while. Like don't prevent yourself from having fun, but it's like, but be self-aware enough not to be a prisoner of the moment to think, all right, well, this is going to dictate the rest of my training, or I'm a huge failure and the dessert did everything to do with it. I'm just not that fast, So, but no, you're exactly right. It was totally a shift in psychology in the approach to what my expectation shouldn't be. Not should be, what my expectation shouldn't be. Because I didn't have an expectation. It was, I'm happy to be back on the bike. I'm excited about it. And I'm looking forward to it. And I think one of the greatest parts of if I know there's plenty of athletes out there. I know a lot of them who are coming back from injury, who are sidelined. I'll give 2 quick shout outs real quick. Lance Hostetler, who has like a fracture, I believe it was a fibia and torn ACL and MCL. He's an athlete of mine in Virginia playing beach volleyball. He's on the off training obviously for a pretty substantial time. And then just today I found out one of my athletes in Illinois, Nick Bokius, actually had a really bad accident and fell off his roof.
Oh man.
He's a broken arm and some other things, but he got lucky. But so they're going to be on this comeback trail. You're going to be bummed right now, which I think is healthy. Don't pretend like you're okay. It's okay to be bummed. But for me, there is almost no more of an exciting time than the beginning of the comeback, which is the great thing, and it is also if your priorities and your mentality going into it are kind of warped, can also be the setting yourself up for failure 364 days down the road.
Yeah, as you're talking about that no expectation thing, it reminded me of a conversation. When I was just up north. I was out watching a friend's band, and in between sets, I just happened to be sitting at a table with some people, and we started talking about Ironman or whatever. And one of the guys was at some point, he's my age, like 50, but back in the day, he was a college runner, and he was a marathon runner, and he was kind of like, I was like, he had a lot of cool things to say. I said, so what kind of marathon were you running back in the day? He said he said his best was like 2:15. And so he's, at least in our conversation, I don't really know his background or anything, but legit. That is like super legit.
Yeah.
Marathon time. And we started talking about training a little bit and everything like that. And for whatever reason, I think they might have noticed my chrono. We started talking about Garmin's and things like that. And he said, yeah, I never ran with a watch. He said he'd use a watch in training for tempo runs and things like that, and but he said he never ran with a watch, and he said it was always just because I got out there and I just let that go, and it was all about what you're saying, is kind of feeling it and just and work and thinking about your pace and just sort of enjoying. I don't know if it was that enjoy it to the point where you didn't have to. I mean, because that's the worst thing that ever happens to me during a race is because I do chrono, when I start looking and trying to calculate my pace and doing all these weird things, and I hit a section where there's some hills and it really throws me off and screws everything up, then you just start pressing. But invariably during most of my Ironman, I've just sort of like at some point just gave up on the clock, and just started trying to find a zone. And I think that, I don't know, I just feel like in somewhere in all of this there's a lesson like that, where you have expectations, and the minute you start not hitting them, that gets in your head, and that like spirals into your performance somehow. So I did want to ask, like, so since you've done that and you've learned what you've learned, so now as you're starting again and you're going to be training for something, a triathlon at some point. So what are you thinking right now? Like what's your first step? Do you go out and do you start just going long and slow? Or
that's a great question. And I feel now is about as good a time as any. I went through after we moved here back to Nashville. I was pretty much on the shelf from all exercise for a little over 3 weeks. I just had, we had multiple breaks and podcasts, and even we came over here for the shoot for the Patreon pages. I had this cough and this respiratory infection that I just literally could not get rid of. And I was sidelined for about a little over 3 weeks, and for nothing, no running, no cycling, no swimming, obviously, and no weight training. And I literally just started to feel better, probably, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 days ago. Kind of felt finally like I was back, like 100%. I think the move probably took a lot more out of me than I anticipated before I got sick. That actually probably had something to do with it. I preach to my athletes all the time when they travel a ton. Like the first day back, the first like 3 or 4 days back, I always tell them, I put in their program, like, I give them extra days off and extra easy sessions, even though all they want to do is train hard because they've been away. But the fact of the matter is that your system is so compromised from all the travel and all the non-workout related stress that you're lying in wait to get sick, and I think that happens all the time. I think you've I think suffered from that quite a few times, and a lot of driving, and you got back and you're like, bam, I'm going to get back. And then 4 or 5 days later, you're like, oh shit, I'm back on the couch, cause you're so done, it's like you're behind the eight ball before you can even get to break. And so a couple of days ago, actually, decided to email Leadville and tell them I was going to defer to next year. Not really something I want to do. But losing 3 weeks is a lot. And I don't feel like I can actually go into that race looking here just about 8 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks to the day, and actually be able to perform, or actually be even probably with this much of a layoff, be close to actually doing what I wanted to do. And so I made that decision here a couple of days ago to pull the plug and defer to next year. Not something I enjoy doing. I hate doing that kind of stuff, but it just is what it is, and I'm okay with it. And one of the biggest reasons I think I'm okay with it is that I have been more than, I would say, using the word rejuvenated is an understatement, by this podcast and by my athletes and the ability to coach and our closed group within our Crushing Iron Closed Facebook group, and so many interactions we've had with people across the country and even across the world about the sport of triathlon, and how much more I've actually grown to love it, and what it does for people and what it's done for me, that it has done nothing more but made me itch so much that I had to just finally scratch it and say, I've been away for a while. I can't imagine being away any longer. Let's start the build back for 2018.
Wow, man. Yeah, I'm with you, man. So defer it. That's how it goes.
Yeah, you can defer it. You don't lose any money at all. You just defer it to the next year.
That's cool.
Yeah, leaves you off the hook too.
Don't think that wasn't in the back of my mind.
No, no, it was. No, I'll be 100% honest with you. Even before I got sick with this respiratory thing, I was already pretty bummed. One of my really good friends, Blake, had to bail out because of some really serious back issues, and part of one of the main reasons I wanted to do this was just for the overall experience with people that I care about, who have been with me and through things with me the past 3 or 4 years that really nobody else has, and so that was kind of a letdown. I'm not sure if that psychologically got me on in certain ways, but all in all, I honestly couldn't be happier with where I am right now, and I couldn't be more pumped to start running and cycling and swimming again, and I'm so pumped for camp. And honestly, it's the athletes that I work with, that I have the privilege to work with, and the people that listen to this podcast, and this whole process, I think, has just, I don't want to say it's given me new life within the sport, but I think after being in it so long, and going through so many things, I think it's easy to get jaded because you think, oh well, things aren't like it used to be. Things aren't like it. You're the old guy. Like, slow down in my neighborhood. It's like,
yeah, that's me.
But yeah, all that is. But it's just been like the overwhelming positivity of the people that I've come into contact with have made me think like, man, like this sport is awesome. And it is more than drowned out any negativity I currently have about any of it. And I'm couldn't be more pumped to get back into it. I'm actually, before you dialed in, I was actually working on my first week, building my first week back for training. But yeah, dude, I'm pretty pumped. I've already got a tentative race calendar for next year that I'm thinking of. But
you're doing Louisville with me, huh?
Nope, not doing Louisville with you. I am next year.
In Louisville next year?
I have a love affair with that race, and you know that.
Yeah, I know.
I
get it. I like it too.
It's not for sure, but it is on my. It's dude. It's gonna be Nevada, Wisconsin, all right?
Well, I know. I'm just saying, if they have it next year, Louisville. I mean,
yeah,
the way
that's true.
Ironman, the races are dropping.
Yeah, I can't tell you it's so long away, but I can tell you my first will actually be Texas 70.3 in Galveston.
What, this year?
No, dude. Next year. I'm not gonna race any this year.
I thought you were thinking about New Orleans.
Well, stop throwing me under the bus like this.
Well, I mean, come on, man. We're open books, man.
It's out there. Yeah, if things go well these next 8 weeks, then I'll definitely go and at least dust the rust off for sure. I can't do Louisville. I'm kayaking for my good buddy for Swim the Suck, which is a 10-mile swim race in Knoxville the day before. So I'm in
not Knoxville. It's Chattanooga.
Yeah, Chattanooga. He's from Knoxville, but yeah, it's in Chattanooga.
Yeah.
But no, who knows? Maybe New Orleans if I get in good enough shape quick enough. You could always do that one with me too. Go back there and
Swim the Suck?
No.
Oh, get redemption on New Orleans. I don't think
get redemption on your that rough rate. But anyway,
it's not the same. It's not in a hot time of year anymore.
Oh God, that's always going to be your thing. It's not in the hot time of year. But anyway,
I'm gonna be the old crusty guy, man.
Dude, you are. You're old and crusty. But no,
it's more about Major League Baseball for me. But
dude, don't even get me. I don't want to talk about that.
Come on, man. Let's have a separate bonus cast about MLB.
Yeah. I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure if you can call it a bonus cast. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. But to your question, I think it was what? How do you ease back into it?
Or, yeah, I mean, what's your next step now that you know what you know about your cycling?
I I'll plan out my. Here's the thing with me though is I have so many years of data that I can, and I'm hopefully fairly competent at doing training plans. The biggest what if, or the biggest if for me or variable is I don't know how quickly I'll be able to come back. It could be just like substantially quicker, or it could take longer. So, what I'm going to do these first kind of 3 or 4 weeks is just I'm going to do it based on volume. I'm going to bike with purpose. All my cycling is going to have specific workouts, mostly skill, with threshold stuff, and then I'll get in some run volume. But really, the first 2 or 3 weeks is just kind of be a hey, let's see where I'm at, and then I can start to make some plans. Because I think after about really this next week and then camp, and then the week after that, I'll have a pretty good idea of kind of where I am physically, and then I can start to kind of tune it in and focus and think, all right. But for now, this next week's going to be all cycling and running. The next week I'll build in the swim. We'll have that whole weekend to camp. And then I think I'll kind of understand, all right, this is kind of where I'm at. And dude, there's no better time of the year to do indoor training work than right now with the Tour de France on. It is like prime time greatness when it comes to being on your trainer, and turn on a little bit of tour.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. Maybe maybe this will inspire me because I haven't really had anybody to train with. Maybe we can get this going again.
Dude, I'd love it.
If you can get it over to the lab.
I can get over to the lab.
Yeah, and then we'll start maybe doing a little more of that morning swim business.
Oh yeah, dude. I'm pumped. And if our house gets finished early, we can just, I'll be swimming all the time. I can ride my bike to your house, basically.
That's a good point. I'll get you on those rollerblades. We'll get it going.
Dude, listen, man, I'm trying to stay injury free the rest of the year. Me and rollerblades aren't. There's no need to Nancy Kerrigan me. I'll just be like crushing my knee after like one lap around the lab, if I even make it that far. I'm not skates are not my thing. But to a more important question, so are you gonna do Louisville? What's the deal?
Well, I'm kind of in your mode right now, to be honest. I've been 1 week sort of back 1 week, and that was the first week of what would be 16 weeks. So I have a decent little base from Chattanooga, and I started this week and feel pretty good about it. I went out running today. In the back, it's funny because when in the back of my mind, thinking about doing Leadville, I'm like, God, I gotta start running, man. I gotta start. I'm thinking about I gotta get on some trails, and I'm gotta get some trail shoes. I gotta really get this thing going because like when Blake had to step off or step aside because of and I noticed that you had sent the the breakdown was that I was doing the overnight one, which is like 12 or 13 miles, and I'm going, I could, I'll figure that one out. And but in the back of my mind, when he stepped aside, I was thinking I was going to try and surprise you and spring it like, hey, I'll do that 26-mile section for you. And I was going to spring that on you, but I wasn't quite to the point of it yet. So I don't know if I ever would have gotten to that point, except maybe after the race if I'm training for Louisville. But anyway, so I'm kind of in a holding pattern, and I'm hoping that this next week and then the week of the camp and everything kind of gets me to a place where I understand where I'm at, and not only physically but emotionally and psychologically. To decide. But I mean, I'd say right now it's 50-50, and I want to do it, but I don't want to make that leap just yet.
And if you don't, you can always do New Orleans.
Yeah, it's right around the same time, or what?
It's the weekend after.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of options out there.
And you don't have to hurry, and you can just take it as it comes.
Yeah. It's funny though, because part of me, and I can't remember if I've had this conversation with some people, but when I go back home sometimes and I'm hanging around some of my buddies are really trying to, we're getting older, so some of them are working out, and then you go around and I see a lot of people that I went to high school with or whatever, and they're losing it, man, or they've lost it. So it kind of comes back to this, as much as having a full on the schedule is a daunting task. I think it's just sort of a forced daunting task for me, just to keep me in line, because if I'm like, I'll do New Orleans, do the half, I'm kind of in the back of my mind already going, well, I could probably do that tomorrow. So it's like I feel like I have to step it up and really push myself a little bit, and that's why I like the idea of keep doing fulls, and I suppose that's the same for a lot of people, man. The minute you kind of let one go as you at a certain age, that gets like twice as hard,
Yeah, exactly.
So that's sort of why I'm thinking about Louisville.
I got you. Hey, I like it, man. I think it's a great approach. You're in the sport, you're enjoying it, have a good mindset, and take it as it comes.
But man, so my goal is 735 miles. I'm kidding.
You're fired.
I'm fired.
You're fired.
No, but I again, it's that same old damn thing. I know I can do a full, but it's I'm gonna have to get my long run ability down to like 7, and then expect to do a 9-minute pace. How's that?
I like it. Just do it. Pull the trigger.
Pull the trigger. All right.
Signing you up right now, Mike Trowley.
Well, that's where we're at.
That's where we're at. So we got a little sidetracked today, but hope you enjoyed that one.
People like that.
Yeah, I hope so. I guess we'll find out tomorrow.
or
today. If you're listening to it tomorrow, it's Sunday, so today. Yeah, Monday. And hey, everybody have a great July 4th. Be safe. Don't play with fireworks. They're dangerous. And again, if you want to be part of the conversation, please join our Crushing Iron closed Facebook group. It's awesome. We always have good conversation and laughs in there as well, like our Crushing Iron page on Facebook. I believe you can follow us now on Twitter at C26 Triathlon. Is that right, Mike?
On Twitter, it's just Crushing Iron.
Crushing Iron. And then you can follow us on the Instagram at C26_triathlon. But yeah, things are going great. And if I might send you a link, dude. This if you have any interest in the swim analysis that I've talked about before in the previous podcasts, it is just like ridiculously taking off. The feedback from the athletes have been crazy. Getting testimonials out the yin yang within like a week or two of people getting them, they're seeing massive improvements. And this is something that people think that they need to wait to the off season to do because there's not enough time to work on it. But swimming is one of those things that if you can just change a small portion of your technique, you can have a huge benefit. So if you're interested in learning more about what the swim analysis that I do and the coach's eye, feel free to email me at c26coach@gmail.com. And if you are, now that we're in July, if you are anywhere close to Columbia, Missouri, I will be doing a open water swim clinic for their Columbia Multisport Club on July 29th. Email me at c26coach@gmail.com for details, or stay tuned for links.
Sounds good, man. I think that you're right about that swimming thing too. I keep thinking about that, and a lot of times what happens swimming, it seems like if I swim a lot, I like something will click, you know what I mean? And then it just like, swimming just seems, and of course I've been talking to you for the last 5 years about swimming and stuff like, so I have, a lot of the right thoughts in my head, but eventually after a good string of swim sessions, something does click and all of a sudden, I've got it. But it would seem like it would be a heck of a lot easier to analyze the stroke and then say, hey, this is what's going on. If one little tweak makes it that much of a difference, I mean, I think that'd be worth it.
It is, and it's a great value, and I mean, and it doesn't matter how fast or how slow you are. I mean, I've had people drop 20 seconds off their 100, and then just yesterday I got a testimonial back from a girl who I've been working with, who's a 2-time Kona and 70.3 Worlds qualifier, and she texted me and said, "Mini victory dance. I've been focusing on those changes, high elbow and reaching during my swim, and I just maintained a 113 pace per 100 for my 300 repeats. Holla, thanks RB." So it really doesn't. If you think, oh, I'm already at the pointy end, I'm already fast enough. Minutes matter, and so therefore seconds also matter. So if you want to get in touch, it's one of my biggest passions in the world, and you know this. Is working with people on their swim stroke and helping people get better. So feel free to reach out, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Yep, no doubt. Feel free to hit that Patreon page.
Hit it hard.
Hit it hard. Thanks for everyone that's done it. And that's it for today. The Crushing Iron Podcast.
All right. And we'll have a happy 4th. We'll check you on the flip side.
Yeah, hug your dogs during the fireworks.
Yeah, hug your dogs. All right. See you, dude.
See you, man.